The Manitoba Advocate for Children and Youth wish to acknowledge that we are located on the original lands of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and the beautiful homeland of the MACY Nation.
So, welcome back. Here we are for episode number 26, Youth Engagement Live. We're going to be covering rights. We have a new setup today. We're going to be going a little bit shorter on our videos weekly now, and we're going to talk about, articles, rights of the UNCRC, United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. My name is John, part of the Manitoba Advocate for Children and Youth, and luckily, I'm glad to have Michael, and I will let Michael introduce himself.
Hi, my name is Michael, and I'm part of the YAAS group, Youth Ambassador Advisory Squad, YAAS.
With an apostrophe.
With an apostrophe. Yeah. With an apostrophe.
That was, again, we got to go with what the youth want.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
And these amazing Got Rights t-shirts as well. We got the little YAAS logo at the bottom too.
I forgot mine.
Oh my gosh. So, I guess let's get right into it, Michael. So we're talking about the UNCRC article/right number 23. If you live with a disability, you have the right to special care and to be included in the community. That's a pretty heavy one.
It is.
So for anybody out there that's followed our episodes week in and week out, we talk about these 42 rights. And I do like to just state that even though we're talking about one right this week, they're all equally important. And we're just trying to highlight week in and week out the different rights. And luckily, we have our youth ambassador team, and we have Michael here to help provide that youth perspective on the rights. Because obviously, as an adult, youth rights could look a little bit different and have a different meaning. So I think it's very important that we have Michael here to give us that youth lens and use that youth voice. And I know, Michael, I'm putting you on the spot, speaking for all youth. But at the same time, I mean, we know that the rights can look different to other youth as well. So again, just keeping that in mind, we like to get a youth perspective. So if you live with a disability, you have the right to special care and to be included in the community. So I guess offhand, what comes to mind, Michael, when you hear that right?
Special care included. I would say awareness in classrooms and not segregating a lot of youth that have like ADHD or etc. and sectioning them out to special classrooms and trying to, encourage them to be in a normal classroom setting instead of seeing them as a kind of burden to deal with in classrooms, because I've seen that time and time happen all the time in high school where they would be sectioned out and put into another class where they would be with other people with disabilities or learning disabilities and, really segregate students and not having them part of the community, and make them feel alienated, pushed away.
So kind of segregating them puts a spotlight on some...
Even if it's not a heavy disability,
Mm-hmm.
like teachers, they just don't want to deal with it and they put them into another class that assists them more, but they also get segregated and alienated to other students, and other students see them as such when that happens.
So, and I suppose, we do mention we're dealing with both physical and we're talking about mental, psychological, so all kinds of disabilities for youth. We're not just specifically talking about one, but highlighting that disability for the youth can possibly do more harm than getting that extra help, or what you're saying is how we help them in whatever extra ways that person might need. We should be reminded that putting a spotlight on them also can be detrimental, or it can be negative or harmful for them. Yeah. I think that's interesting because it's a youth perspective that we don't always think about, right? We, good intention, wanting to help, can sometimes decide how we help can make a difference, is what you're saying.
Yeah, and for me, I was in LAC, and there's special conditions to that. They segregate the students, they put them in another class to help them with learning or behavioral issues, and it just never felt good because the rest of the school seen us as dangerous or bad, the bad kids, the bad group. So it helped with learning, but it did not help in terms of community and having that school experience.
So that's interesting too, because like you and I were talking about this before, and it's something that you as the youth have said to me, and it made me reconsider even the idea of the word disability. And when you're talking about youth, and we talk about cultural inclusiveness and being a hot topic for our youth ambassador team. So it made me think about, instead of seeing a youth as with a disability, it's about how do we become ability inclusive.
Yes.
Right? Kind of in the same context that you guys were talking about, cultural inclusive. So instead of pushing the youths away or segregating or separating, how do we include them and include their ability? Because even any youth with any sort of disability, they have abilities.
Yes, of course.
So it's kind of the same thing. What you're talking about is being inclusive of them and giving them that care that they need, but at the same time, not picking them out.
Separating, segregating, and yeah.
And I mean, we haven't really talked about it, but for a disability, even just a physical disability, the idea of the surroundings and what that youth is having to deal with. If they have a physical disability, do they have like something simple as ramps, and in the washrooms, if they have the accessibility piece, if they have issues when it comes to certain things like lights and sounds, are we being inclusive, and are we making a space that's going to help them?
That's very true. A lot of places, there's a lot of people that just can't handle schools because schools are just covered in fluorescent lights, and I know that was a big problem for me in high school. I couldn't stand a light half the time, and like some schools would be different. It would just be so bright that you just get a headache afterwards, and they don't buy it. They're like, oh no, you can still work. Everyone else is working, so you should be able to work.
So something as simple as bright lights, what would it do for you? Like, what did you find? Was it distracting, or did it give you headaches? Like, what kinds of things?
It was distracting, headaches, and sometimes when they flicker, oh man. And I wear glasses whenever I get the chance. I wear shades like I'm wearing now. Like, it's a very constant thing for me because I really don't like fluorescent lights. And I know some classrooms were super aware of that. I know somebody in high school that she always had her classroom dimmed, and it was the most relaxing, best class ever. Everyone got their work done. There's always students that still aren't getting their work done, but the lights were never the problem. But everyone loves that class because it's calm, relaxing, and the lights aren't really like tearing down on you from above.
So then the thing would be to ask, if you have a youth who's having maybe difficulties, like you're saying, in class or any other setting, it doesn't have to just be to school, but taking the time to ask that youth, then in my opinion, I guess would be a good approach, like finding out maybe why they're not focusing or why they can't focus on assignments or whatever the case may be, right?
Yeah.
Were you ever asked?
That's a difficult thing because I was asked questions like that, but as a youth or a young person in high school or junior high, you're not just gonna say it like just right out. Getting asked such a simple question, anxiety gets to you, and it's kind of hard. You gotta figure out a way to say it and get a response.
Patience.
Which is the difficult part. Just ask every once in a while. Don't ask constantly, but if you are aware, you can see visible signs of somebody trying to cover their eyes, or like they're really not liking the lights, and you can really tell. Just keep asking, but not constantly, not every single day.
So as an extension of that, then I'm going to ask you on the spot, nothing prepared. So you're talking about engaging with the youth. So what are some tips for caregivers and teachers and people out there, if you're trying to get that ability to talk to a youth and ask them things like this? What are some tips? Like you're saying, not ask them too much, but do you have any other suggestions that for approaching a youth and getting that engagement piece so that they feel comfortable talking to you?
patience. How you ask? I don't know. Recommendation box. I don't know. Some kind of sounds silly. A classroom environment recommendation box. Like better tables, dimmer lights,
Mhm.
or sound. Keep it down, etc.
Hmm. I think that's an interesting idea because I know,
Anonymous, by the way.
of course,
Yeah.
right, and that helps. Like what we're talking about with building that relationship and trust and engagement with that youth, and because you want a response,
Yeah.
but you have to allow that response to come to you when you're saying when a youth is ready.
Yeah. You got to meet a young person at their level, because when you're an adult, you already know half the things. You've been through it. You've done it. They're going through it. Their perspective is different. They have their primary perspective. Things are much harder in their perspective, and you got to try to work with that. You got to try to work with it, not work against it.
Well, I find this is pretty enlightening hearing things like this because as an adult, we don't often take time to stop and think about some of these things because our lives get so busy. So you forget some of this stuff when you were a kid, right?
Yeah.
So, and sorry, youth, not kid.
Yep.
Youth. So if you live with a disability, you have the right to special care and to be included in the community. UNCRC, right, number 23. Is there anything else that you can think of that's important for us to add before we wrap up here on this right or around youth engagement in general?
If somebody has a behavioral issue, lights issue, attention issue, hyper issue, don't disclude them from the community because of that. You're only going to worsen it. You're only going to make it worse. You're going to make them feel more disabled than they're being brought up to think they are. And just really don't segregate. Try to work the best you can with people and try to include them, make them feel a part of the community.
That's nice. That's like I said, ability inclusive.
Yeah.
Right, and I think that's a term that I would like to start using rather than disability inclusive, because what you're saying is including any abilities of any youth is really
most
important.
times when disability is involved, the immediate thing they do is segregate to make it easier
Mm-hmm.
and not give them a chance to experience everything else everyone else is experiencing. They have every right to experience what everyone else has experienced, whether it be walking down the hallways with everybody or going to recess with everyone at the same time.
Mm. Well, that's a lot to consider, I think, for this right. So I just want to wrap up by saying thank you, Michael, for giving us your youthful insight on this right for this week. For anybody out there that doesn't know, our phone number is 1-800-263-7146. And you know what? I always say, if you're not sure if you should be calling the Manitoba Advocate, then the best thing is to just call. And we talked about it on Michael, and I was saying, if you had known when you were younger, would you have called? And so it's about getting that knowledge out there and letting people know that there are advocates here that are willing to help, get your voice out there, and be heard as a youth. Anything else?
One call away.
One call away. All right. We'll see you again next week. Thank you.